A helpless pout flickered on Nicholas's face before it almost instantly curved into a sly grin. Nicholas knew where he could find his favorite person. He leaped from the arm of the couch to land at the entrance of the tent. From there, he sprung forward like a shot straight into Derek, shoving him over onto his back with an oath. Derek didn't get up. He flopped his arms out and laid motionless. 3, 2, 1. Derek was down for the count. Nicholas was the winner. Claiming his victory, Nicholas curled up on Derek's flattened chest. He tuckered himself out. You sat straight. You sat stretched out on the blanket inside the tent. George wandered over to sit down cross-legged. He had one shoulder in the tent and the rest of him out. Derek's eyes drooped closed. He heaved a satisfied sigh. I'm too old to keep up with you, bros. You can party way harder than me. He could still muster enough energy to move a hand over his brother's fluffy marshmallow speckled hair. The little boy snuggled his cheek into Derek's jersey even more. Still cross-legged, George took hold on his ankles and rocked himself gently back and forth. The childlike position conflicted how contemplative his next words were. I wonder what things will be like when we really are older. The brother with the most days behind him smiled softly while his eyes remained shut. That's easy. 10 years from now, I'm gonna be a famous athlete. Nicholas will obviously be there, the cheer captain at all my games. Derek earned a squealing giggle from Nicholas. He even kicked a leg out like a puppy who got a tummy scratch. George, you'll be my career manager. George stopped his movement, sitting a little taller. A smile pulled at the edges of his mouth.
Obviously.
Faye will be there too. That perked your own interest. If it was me, I would choose the merchandising, but I wanna see what he'll say, so I'll just try other options as well. Well, I'll probably choose his trophy wife because it is his root after all. Derek coughed unintentionally as soon as you said your contribution to the master plan, but he rolled with it. Right. It's the best trophy I ever won. Top of the shelf. Then his voice drifted off quietly, and the four of us would all be neighbors. You thought that sounded wonderful. He wanted to live next to you. He wanted you to be part of his future. Derek, George, and Nicholas, you glanced at each of their faces and felt glad you got to be there. You went to different schools, lived in different towns, had different families, but sometimes you were able to share your worlds with each other. And maybe someday Derek's story would come true and you'd be even closer. But that time wasn't now and all too soon. The Suarez parents reappeared to take their younger children off for bed in their own room. Despite nearly being asleep already, Nicholas grasped Derek's shirt when his dad reached in to pick him up. Derek kept his one hand on Nicholas's head and pressed the other against the floor, slowly shifting into a sitting position. Nicholas's vice-like grip made it easy to do without either of them falling over. When he was upright, Derek collected his little brother in his arms fully and shuffled out of the tent. "This is pretty cool, huh, Nickel? Usually I'm all the way in my room, but tomorrow all you'll have to do is open the door, look down the hall, and I'll be there," Derek whispered so soothingly on the path to the back bedroom. Putting to bed not just the delicate bundle he carried, but also the likely resistance the boy would have put up. George trailed behind his other brothers. He didn't need the extra help, but Derek stood in place. He didn't move until the middle one could come up by his side. Altogether, the three Suarez sons went through the door. You waited in the living room quietly. Maybe a minute or two passed before Derek switched off with his parents. He came out empty-handed, and they went in. He took wide, tiptoeing steps over to the campsite. His sleepiness from before was wiped away by a second wind of excitement. Derek made it back to the tent and put a hand to his mouth, watching the hall like a hawk for any sign of his family.
It's all good.
"We've got to change into our pajamas, but we don't have to go to sleep for real." You got to your feet, his eagerness rubbing off on you. The both of you quietly bustled between the bathroom and living room, finishing all last-minute prep. Derek's parents lingered at the edge of the hallway until both you and Derek were completely set. PJs on, teeth brushed, the works. "Good night, Derek and Faye."
Good night.
"Sleep well. Enjoy the great outdoors of the living room." "Night, Mom. Night, Dad." "Good night." Mr. Suarez hit the lights. The condo blinked into darkness. There were footsteps, silence, and the click of the door opening and shutting. His parents had returned to their own bedroom, this time to turn in for the rest of the night. With the opening and intermission over, Part 2 of the Derek and Faye at Home adventure out could begin. Derek went from sitting up perfectly straight, ready for some non-existent interview, to dropping forward onto his stomach. He squirmed around using his elbows. The effort fluttered the tent and blankets, making a soft crinkling sound. When he had positioned himself facing you, Derek rested his head against the top of one fist. He grinned keenly. The rest of his family might have been right across the condo, but this was still the first chance to talk just between yourselves since the sleepover started. He'd been waiting for it. "Hey, Faye." His cheeks lifted high enough to push up the bottom of his eyes as he whispered with a childlike sense of secret sharing.
So,
"I was wondering, if we were being totally, completely serious, what would you be doing in the future? Do Do you have, I don't know, a goal or a dream? Yeah, I do. I like to help people. You're so nice. And I really want to actually feel that, but I want to be very skilled. Same. I want to learn a lot. Knowledge is power. As an adult, I want to travel. Awesome. And it would be amazing to fall in love. Yeah. And that sort of things. Cool. Thanks for telling me. Derek contemplatively rolled over on his back. The arm that had held his chin up, was now tucked under his head for support there inside. His eyes never broke away from yours, despite flipping upside down. He could move as freely as he wanted and was taking full advantage of that. When his siblings were around, he had to work with 8 limbs and 2 heads, thanks to Nicholas's literal attachment to him. And that got your train of thought fully on track of siblings. You opened your mouth and said, I wish my older sibling was as nice as you are. Derek made a valiant attempt to nod along from his lopsided position. Elizabeth isn't a super helpful role model. Sorry if that means. It's true. He covered his mouth with his free hand to keep his snickers from getting too loud. Do you ever wish you had a big sibling? His gaze trailed off from yours for the first time so he could stare at the tent ceiling. I don't think so. Maybe I've never needed a big sibling to look up, 'cause I already had someone for that. My dad. Oh, that makes sense. The air in the near complete darkness had felt warm and comfortable, but the atmosphere began to change. It was too subtle to say exactly why, but enough for you to notice. Faye? Derek reversed his position again, getting on his stomach. His arms were crossed over the floor in front of him, and he rested his cheek down against them. Derek's eyes were on the ground too. Would it be weird to ask if you're having fun? No, it wouldn't be weird. Yeah, that's cool. He clicked his heels together in a rhythm, soft taps and rustling on the blanket. 1, then 2, and 3, 4 in quick succession, and it repeated again. Derek mumbled into his forearm. I was just really hoping this would be a nice time.
Forget it.
It's nothing. But Derek sprung up on his palms, bringing his head up to your level and beaming directly at you. Have you watched anything cool recently? George and I have been showing Nicholas a lot of great stuff he couldn't see before because he was too little when they came out. I wanted to answer that I did have a good time, so I'm just gonna go back again. I thought he would ask again. I'm having fun. Yeah, that's great. And the reaction was
Forget it.
same. Just he kicked the ball in a new direction and had too high of a defense for you to maneuver it back, but that was alright. You could talk to Derek about anything. You and Derek continued to bounce from topic to topic. You quietly spoke your thoughts out into the air while hidden away from the rest of the world in your camp. It went on through the night until, before you'd realize it, your eyes were opening to the morning sunlight. But there was no peace in Derek's household. It's morning. After giving his war cry, Nicholas barreled from his room and catapulted himself into the tent. Derek wrestled with Nicholas on the blanket in a tickle fight. It was a memorable way to begin the day. For breakfast, there was a cupboard full of different cereals and instant oatmeal packs to choose from, plus fruits, berries, and nuts to top it with if you wanted. Each bowl was prepared to its owner's specifications, either by themselves or by Mrs. Suarez for those too little to reach everything. You got maple oatmeal and you added walnut chunks. That was everything. Nicholas tried to grab the bag of walnuts away from you whenever you attempt to use them. He giggled the whole time. He didn't even want to eat them. Derek didn't use them, so he had no intentions of adding any. It was a game. You ultimately won it, snatching it off the counter when he stopped to take a bite of his meal. Nicholas was a good loser and only smiled with his mouth full at your victorious sprinkling of walnuts. You glanced down the hallway, expecting Derek's dad to come join the family soon, but Mrs. Suarez let you know how Mr. Suarez very sneakily went past you a couple hours ago when you were sleeping. Derek swallowed a spoonful of peach oatmeal with blueberries to note how his dad had commute. Derek's mom nodded before moving the conversation forward. I'll take you home in the evening. The younger ones can stay with Mr. Suarez then. You'll have a peaceful ride. Your moms know it'll be a little late. We worked it out yesterday while you were packing. And I'll be out running errands until then. I will be bringing the kids. You two can enjoy your time however you choose. Is that fine? Derek stuck his spoon towards the ceiling and gave you a thumbs up from the bar stool. Yes, thank you, Mrs. Suarez. Derek put his other fist on the counter, double thumbs up. Soon you learned another new thing about Derek's family. His dad commuted very early, and all hands were tasked with cleaning up, whether they were guests or not. The five of you made quick work of breakfast. Then Mrs. Suarez, with some more assistance from Derek, corralled George and Nicholas into the minivan to act as helpers during her daily tasks. George could properly fulfill that role, while Nicholas was more of an honorary helper who still needed more support than he gave. The title was still exciting enough for him to release Derek for 1 minute so he could be strapped into his car seat for the drive. From one job to another, you and Derek were left alone to put the living room back into its proper order. First, your belongings were collected and put aside to make sure nothing got mixed in with the other supplies. The blankets were stuffed back into Derek's room, and the spare closet, and any loose marshmallows that were discovered to have escaped being devoured and ended up on the floor were thrown in the trash. Your campsite became a hollow shell of what it once was. It had ended so quickly, but a short adventure in the great outdoors of the Suarez living room was better than none. It was still a minor miracle that you got to come. You didn't forget that. Lastly, the two of you worked as a team to break down the tent itself. You slipped out each of the poles, retracted them to their smaller size, and began to get them packed away into the sturdy bag they came from the night before. While folding up one of the legs, Derek lightheartedly chatted with you.
Oh man.
I'm so excited. The whole day. We can do anything before you gotta go. Walk to the park, watch a movie, get food somewhere. He hummed along with a bounce in his pose. He was having plenty of fun just doing regular chores with you. The good mood was infectious. It's great. I was just thinking about how I was surprised by my mom's let me come today. Out of nowhere, Derek twitched like he was hit by a bolt. His hands flipped over protectively, and the pole fumbled out of his grasp. It clattered against the wooden floor. The sharp sound made Derek wince. He gave a meek apology while the leg rolled back against his sneaker just as pitiful. Sorry. Derek bent his knees and gripped it at his shirt's edge on the way down before he reached out to pick up what he dropped. What were you saying? That was pretty off. You didn't miss the blaring sign complete with warning sounds that something was up, but he obviously wasn't comfortable, so you tried to let it go. I was just talking about my mom's. Usually they're really strict about sleepovers. I can't do it out of nowhere. It was a planned thing. Having it be a camp out in the living room must have helped a lot. You gave a bit of shrug and scanned around for another piece to put away. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. They're like that. Derek fiddled uselessly with the dark gray rubber foot at the end of the pole. He was pretending to keep busy. You wondered if he remembered what the two of you were supposed to be busy with. It wasn't going away. whether you ignored it or not. Did you think they didn't like you or that I meant something else? No,
No.
forget it. It's dumb and doesn't matter. He threw the words at you. It was final and way harsher than you expected from Derek. The sharp edge of it wasn't for you. That part was directed towards himself. You'd never slept over at his house before. That'd be your guess for why it hadn't been a little awkward. There was clearly more to it. You frowned. Derek, what's going on? His brows angled at the same time as a tight bend formed in a tent leg. The way he twisted it between his hands was too much for the thin piece of the pole. He didn't say a word. You can always talk to me about things, you know. He spoke comfortingly. He sealed his eyes tight and dropped out the leg, on purpose this time. Despite all the effort it took him to ask you to come in the first time, that paled in comparison to this. Suddenly, it seemed like he wished you were anywhere but right there. I can't tell you. Derek's voice was an important whisper. You'll think I'm the most annoying guy in the world. I am the most annoying guy in the world. It was such a bad idea. It was sneaky and judgy. I shouldn't have bugged you, but I already did. It's too late. Derek's posture pulled closer and closer together as he spoke. His fist tapped against the front of his chest, and his knees bent inward. The pressure building inside was exerting a real force on him. What if you don't want to be friends anymore? The last part almost disappeared before you'd had a chance to hear it. He looked small and lost. That's never gonna happen. The tension kept compounding, causing cracks where more words could slip through.
Well,
I had a reason why I had invited you when I did, why it needed to be now. Yes? Even though his eyes cracked open, Derek wasn't looking at you, but finally he sucked in a breath and took the plunge. Faye, today is Father's Day. Your jaw dropped. You had completely forgotten that was today. You could put it together immediately and though you were still stunned, you could put it into words. You thought I was gonna be sad because it's Father's Day and I don't have a dad? Derek lowered his head and pressed his shoulders up to his ears, trying to hide from the sound of it. Well, I wasn't thinking for sure that you'd be sad. I didn't know how you were gonna feel about any of it, and that's what was chewing at me. Derek poured out words one after another, trying to explain himself, the conflicting feelings he had bottled up the entire time. The floodgates had been opened. It's not like I was around last year when this happened. I couldn't help wondering if it was a normal thing, or a good time, or a low point, or whatever. But I don't live in Sunset Bird. I can't walk on over like it's nothing to check. I had to come up with some other dumb way to be around. Derek's speaking pace slowed, but his blinks picked up speed. His rapid flow of words went from explanation to admonishment. It was enough for him to choke on. But that's stupid because if you actually wanted me to be anywhere near you today, you could have asked yourself. And your moms are great, better than most dads, and you've got Elizabeth too.
Sorry.
I shouldn't have made a whole big thing out of it because I made stuff up in my head. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. And then it went bone dry into silence. Derek dropped his arms to his sides in defeat. He could only look at you out of the corner of his eyes. Derek had been trying to look out for you. The realization made you grateful. You hugged him. It just happened instinctively. You wrapped your arms around his shoulders. Derek's caution turned to confusion. Faye? His breath tickled your neck. After an extra squeeze, you let him go. I'm lucky to have someone like you. Really? You're not gonna tell me you're not gonna tell me to call your moms to come get you and walk out the door and never talk to me again? That's what you thought was gonna happen? Maybe. I figured you'd at least say I'm a pain. I won't say that. Derek crumbled over, gripping his hands against his legs and releasing a massive sigh like he'd finished a marathon. Wow, okay, okay, I'm sorry still. I should have just asked you instead of creepily making you come to my house so I could watch and see if maybe I could figure out without having a normal conversation. I understand. It's hard to ask that kind of thing. The emotional exhaustion from carrying that stress on his back really had taken its toll. Derek crouched completely and plopped onto the floor. You eased down to sit next to him. He tucked his legs up against his chest and tapped at the top of his knees shyly. He was the last kid waiting to be picked up for a team on the playground, and you were the captain who could include him. Would you want to talk now? I think that'd be good. A ghost of a smile appeared on Derek's face. It didn't compare to the ear-to-ear grin you were used to, but it was enough to make everything feel a little more normal, a little more right. Honestly, Derek, I forgot it even was Father's Day. We don't celebrate it, and it doesn't matter to me at all. You did? Derek smacked his head against his legs, humiliated, but you could hear a few tiny chuckles, and you could see the way the laughter made his shoulders shake. I really dropped the ball, huh? I was driving myself crazy for nothing. That's not true. It's nice that you cared. I know I have someone who really worries about me. and that's really pretty special. Derek's face tilted over to the side just enough for you to see the redness tinting his cheeks. Thanks, Faye. Derek waited there on the floor silently, still curled up in a ball. If there was more you needed to tell him, he wasn't going to miss it. I hope doing this didn't ruin your own Father's Day celebration. No way. He slapped the palm against the hardwood floor. That made the outburst even more startling. Derek stared at you with complete seriousness. All he'd want is getting a card sometime, and my bros might get him little kid kinds of gifts, a flower from the park, or a Lego guy or something. You being here too is for sure not gonna ruin it. Don't worry about it. Dad only wants a party all day on birthdays, but you could still come to those anyway. That's good. Nothing would have made you feel worse than having Derek throw away his and his family's celebration to try to give you one. But it was easy to believe what he said. He wasn't placating you. Derek wasn't a liar, even if sometimes he didn't tell you every thought and feeling in his head. I'm glad I've got two moms. I love them. Definitely. I get that. They're really good. That was an understatement. Your moms were some of the best people in the world. Mentioning them took you right back to the fun times you'd had with your family. My moms are happy sharing Mother's Day with each other for the parent-based holiday. Though one time, Mom joked about how they could switch off. One could have the actual Mother's Day for herself, and the other can make Father's Day be the other Mother's Day. Despite Derek's lingering awkwardness, Mom's joke still pulled some snickers from him. She would have been thrilled to know that. That's compromise. Really, what a missed opportunity to not actually do it. Totally. But that's why we've never done anything for today. Your thoughts drifted away from Derek and even from you. They floated across the condo, out the window, and off into the vast summer sky. As a silence settled between you, Derek plucked at his shoelaces and chewed on the inside of his cheek uncomfortably. When you felt the need to fix everything or make it all better, it was a major hitch when it was not your problem to solve. The air conditioner whirled in the background. Through your fuzzy feeling mind's eye, you could picture your moms and your big sister. Then your brain and your body suddenly snapped together in full focus. Wait, what about Elizabeth? The mention of her name got the same instant reaction from Derek that you just experienced. His eyebrows lifted and his mouth opened soundlessly in a little O. She acts like she's over everything, but I think I remember. Back when we were little kids, she would get mad on Father's Day. Maybe that's why she was so aggressive yesterday. She didn't have friends who were coming over or anything, and moms had to work. And now I'm gone too. Derek looked hard at the front door. Was he expecting her to walk through it, or was he planning on running over to Sunset to check? You had no idea. Shoot. I thought there might have been a chance of that. It worried you. She was totally alone. Derek, do you think you could call my house? Definitely, I can do that. Derek unfurled himself, got off the floor, and trotted into the hallway with purpose, mounted right where the living room narrowed into a hallway set against the front wall was an off-white telephone. The phone at your house was wireless. Derek's had an elastic looped line that kept the receiver from going more than a couple feet away from its base. Visions of Nicholas launching a cordless phone into the air purely for his own entertainment made their way across your mind. The option the Suarezes went with was the one most practical for their family. Your sibling, however, would throw a fit if she couldn't chat with her gal pals in private. Elizabeth, you wondered what she was thinking about right now. But you wouldn't have to imagine for longer. Derek didn't waste any time punching in your number. He had it memorized. There had been many times in the past Derek used that very device to call your house so the two of you could chat about your lives and make plans and whatever else. You'd ended up on the other side of things and for once got to watch him go through each of the motions he used to connect with the Madison home. He stood with his back perfectly straight and pressed the phone to his ear as he waited for the solitary person, miles away from where he was, who could answer on the other end. Awkward seconds ticked by, one at a time. You could vaguely hear the ringing coming from the receiver bouncing off the hallway. But then a wide, eager smile pulled all the way across Derek's face. She had picked up the phone. "Hey, Elizabeth, it's Derek Suarez. Faye is here at my home." As chipper and polite as Derek tried to be, there was an obvious strain in his voice. He tucked a finger through one of the rubber-coated loops and twisted the stretchy phone line over and under until it wrapped all the way from his wrist up to the tip of his hand. Did he do that when he was talking to you? I was wondering how things were over there. You silently attempted to fill in the other half of the conversation based on how he was reacting and what you knew about your sister. She definitely asked what on earth he was calling her for.